Hi, Janendra, and welcome to Arihanta Institute's Voices in Compassion Studies speaker series. The Compassion Studies Initiative here at Arihanta Institute brings together leading scholars, educators, and thought leaders from Jain studies and related fields to explore how we can all live more compassionate lives. In a world that often feels divided and uncertain, CSI at AI focuses on fostering human-to-human compassion in action as a powerful response to our most pressing challenges. We are so delighted today to host an inspiring visionary and the founder of Climate Healers, Dr. Sailesh Rao, for his presentation, The Greatest Transformation in Human History. I'm Deanna Hewlett, the academic project coordinator and a graduate student here at Arihanta Institute, and I co-host this series alongside Professor Christopher Jane Miller, our Vice President of Academic Affairs. Professor Rao's presentation will go for approximately 30 to 40 minutes, and afterwards I will support moderating our Q&A session. The Zoom Q&A feature will be open throughout the presentation, so please ask your questions as they arise. I imagine that we will all have many questions today. We at Arihanta Institute would like to thank the Uberoi Foundation for their generous support in our work with the Compassion Studies Initiative. So we hope you enjoy Dr. Rao's presentation, and I'll pass it on now to Dr. Christopher Miller.
Thank you so much, Deanna, and welcome to our wonderful speaker, Dr. Sailesh Rao, who I will briefly introduce here before his talk, The Greatest Transformation in Human History. Dr. Sailesh Rao is the founder and executive director of Climate Healers, a nonprofit dedicated towards healing the Earth's climate. He is an environmentalist by occupation and systems engineer by profession. He invented the protocol for transforming early analog internet connections to more robust digital connections while accelerating their speed tenfold. Still today, any data accessed on the internet likely passed through a device implementing this protocol, and thus we are all here together today to hear from him. He is also a human, earth, and animal liberation activist, HEAL for short, a husband, dad, and since 2010, a star-struck grandfather. He has promised his granddaughter, Kimaya, that the world will be largely vegan before she turns 16 in 2026, so that people will stop eating her relatives, the animals. He has faith that humanity will transform to keep this pinky promise to Kimaya's generation, not just for ethical reasons, but also out of sheer ecological necessity. He has been championing the vegan rewilding solution to our global environmental, health, and ethical crises since 2009. We've done a lot of work with Dr. Rao. He has a course coming up on our platform that you'll be able to find in the chat. And he's also given talks for us before. And it is a great pleasure to once again introduce and welcome to the stage Dr. Sailesh Rao to give the talk, The Greatest Transformation in Human History. Welcome, Sailesh, and thank you so much for speaking to us today.
Thank you, Dr. Miller, and thank you, Deanna, for arranging this presentation. I'm going to share my slides. Okay. So I call this the greatest transformation in human history because the objective is to heal the earth and create peace, which we've all been trying to do for the last 10,000 years, if not longer. And I'm coming to it from a very systems engineering perspective. So how would you systems engineer a solution to world peace and simultaneously heal the earth? So I've written a book about it called There is a Planet B, which you can find on our website and you can download it. And it's looking at the world upside down, which is why you see the earth shown upside down in the picture. So let me start with explaining to you what systems engineering is. I'm a systems engineer by profession. So I begin with systems, and systems are what make human beings the most powerful species on Earth. Because a system is a set of interrelated processes uh, designed to achieve a common goal, processes or elements designed to achieve a common goal. And it's because of systems that we are able to coordinate our actions among millions and even billions of us and become the dominant species on the planet. Now, when our systems, our human engineered systems, are at odds with the life support systems of the planet, you see the result in the life support systems of the planet. And so currently, we have gone way past the planetary boundaries on, as of this moment, 7 aspects of the life support systems of the planet. So the Stockholm Resilience Center came up with these 9 planetary boundaries that we all need to stay within the green zone if we want to maintain life on the planet. And as of this year, we have crossed over 7 of them. The one that we just crossed is ocean acidification, which is shown in green here. So it just moved from green towards yellow last month, according to SRC. So let me just explain these 9 planetary boundaries, beginning with the stratospheric ozone depletion, which, by the way, was in the red zone in the 1980s. And the nations of the world got together and signed the Montreal Protocol, and they phased out the chlorofluorocarbons that were causing the ozone hole in the upper atmosphere. So ozone creates a layer in the upper atmosphere that prevents ultraviolet light from coming down and killing all of us. And we had made a hole in it by using chlorofluorocarbons in our refrigerants as refrigerants. And so the nations of the world got together, signed the Montreal Protocol, and then we phased out those refrigerants and we cleaned up our act, and now it's in the green zone. Hooray, So we have done something real with that, right? The next is atmospheric aerosol loading. These are particles that we put into the atmosphere. And the more particles you put into the atmosphere from our industrial processes or from transportation, it causes animals to die off because they breathe the particles, so they get COPD and they die off. And so that impacts life. And that's also in the green zone. We haven't yet gone beyond the limit on that. Ocean acidification is the next one, and that we just crossed from green into yellow. And that is the acidity of the ocean. And depending on the acidity of the ocean, shelled animals are able to either make shells or not make shells. And when you're in the yellow zone, then shelled animals are having difficulty making shells at the moment. And the ocean is becoming more and more acidic because we are adding more and more carbon dioxide to the atmosphere. And that carbon dioxide goes and mixes with the water, and it becomes carbonic acid. And it makes the ocean more acidic. So it's a direct result of the increased carbon dioxide in the atmosphere. And that's now in the yellow zone. Now there are 6 others that I need to explain to you. Freshwater change is the next. It's not quite in the red zone, but it's getting there. And this is because we have taken the freshwater systems of the planet, like rivers and streams, and we have dammed them, we have polluted them, and we have made it difficult for wild animals to get access to fresh water. And for that matter, even poor people are having difficulty getting fresh water. And that's impacting life. And that's now, almost in the red zone. Next is land system change, and I'll go into more detail with that later on. And this is because we have taken land for ourselves and not left enough land for wild animals, and they're dying as a result of that. And that's in the red zone now. Okay. And then comes the climate change and the CO2. So it is not even the worst planetary boundary violation. It's the 4th worst. Okay. Yet this is the one that gets the most media attention. And this is broken up into 2. The CO2 concentration is in the orange zone. It's almost getting into the dark red zone, but it's not quite there yet. Because we have added 50% more carbon dioxide into the atmosphere than what used to be there in 1800s. So from 280 parts per million, it's now at 425 parts per million. So that's one measure of climate change. Carbon dioxide is one of the major greenhouse gases that we put into the atmosphere. The other major way of looking at climate change is through radiative forcing or effective radiative forcing, and that's in the dark red zone. And that is the amount of extra heating we are causing on the planet. And we are causing about 2.6 watts per square meter as of 2019, according to the IPCC sixth assessment report. And that means that's like adding a 2.6 watt bulb in every 1 meter by 1 meter surface area of the planet. Okay, that's an extra 2.6 watt bulb. Now, the sun is giving us 240 watts per square meter on every square meter, the sun is giving us 240 watts of power, right? So with respect to the sun, it's little over 1% increase. But that 1% increase normally happens over 100 million years. That's how long it takes for the sun to increase in intensity by 1%. And we have done this in about 250 years. Okay, and this is why it's in the red zone, because it's very hard for species to adapt to this kind of increase in heat very quickly, because they have to migrate to be in the same climate that they are used to. And they cannot migrate because we've also, due to land use change, we have cut up the land, so they cannot really move from one place to another, and they're literally dying as a result of that. But by the way, that's only the fourth worst planetary boundary transgression. The next worst, worse than that, is nitrogen and phosphorus loading. And that's the biogeochemical flows. And that's killing more life today than even climate change. And that's from all the nitrogen and phosphorus fertilizers that we put on land that runs off into the rivers. It over fertilizes the bottom of rivers. So then the plants grow really fast and they suck up all the oxygen from the water, and then the fish die because there's no oxygen in the water. So we have created dead zones in freshwater systems, and we have also created dead zones in the mouths of rivers in the ocean. Almost every river on the planet, at the mouth of the river, there's a huge dead zone in the ocean. Okay, and that's killing more life than even climate change. Then comes novel entities, and this was just announced in 2023 that it's in the red zone and we are violating it. And when you have this faded dark red, it means that it keeps going. So it doesn't end there, it keeps going, okay? And this is really bad because we are pouring 220 billion tons of chemicals into the environment every year through our industrial processes. And that's the equivalent of 30 tons per person per year, roughly. So that's about 30 elephants worth of chemicals per person per year. And I wonder, what do I consume that causes 30 elephants worth of chemicals to go out? Well, everything. Paper. If you use toilet paper, if you use paper, they're basically taking wood pulp and they're bleaching it. And to bleach it, they're adding chlorine. And the chlorine mixed with hydrocarbons sends up dioxins into the environment. So every industrial process is putting something out as waste, and that's accumulating. And it doesn't go away. So a lot of these are persistent organic pollutants, and they accumulate in the environment year after year after year. For instance, even novel entities also includes plastic waste, all the plastic pollution we're pouring into the environment. Half the plastic waste in the ocean comes from fishing nets, because these long fishing nets that we use, by the time we catch the fish have bitten through holes in the fishing nets, and so it's unusable. So they just dump it and go off and buy new ones. But that's not even the worst. The worst is what's happening to biosphere integrity, both functional and this genetic diversity. You can see it's again a faded black, faded red at the end, which means it keeps going. The species extinction rate is 100 to 1,000 times the background rate. So, which means we have to bring it down by a factor of 100 to 1,000 if you want to maintain sustainability on this planet. And that is the absolute worst. And all of the other transgressions impact biodiversity, and therefore biodiversity loss is the worst transgression. Now, you don't hear about the other six except for climate change. Climate change gets so much oxygen in the media, and none of the others do. The reason is that climate change impacts rich people, whereas the others mostly impact animals and poor people. Okay? Now, if you look at how uh, the role of food systems in these planetary boundary transgressions is shown in these black dots. And you will see for every other transgression, we know that animal agriculture or food system is the leading cause. Okay? It's the leading cause of every one of them, except for climate change. It is not shown as the leading cause. Okay? And that's the one for which there is so much oxygen in the media, right? Where it's shown as the food system is not the leading cause. Now, if you are a systems engineer and you're looking at how do you solve this problem, the fact that food system is already the leading cause of all the other transgressions tells you that you have to address the food system. Okay? I mean, for me, it was a no-brainer. You have to address the food system from the beginning because of this. And this paper was published in 2017. Okay? Now, but I got curious as to why is it not the leading cause of climate change? What are we doing here? Okay? And so I wanted to delve into it in more detail. Now, you look at the biomass flows of the planet, and this is straight from the IPCC, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, the fifth assessment report, and this is figure 11.9, so you can go look it up. And this is basically showing how we are taking biomass or biomass from land and how we are using it. The thicker the arrow, the more biomass is being used from that land. So you can see the biggest arrows are going into this block called the livestock system block. And so that's all the food that our animals are eating. And then this little line is the food that the animals give out from this little line from pigs and poultry, and this little line from ruminants. And they go together and they go into this food processing block, and then it gets combined with the plants and becomes this blue line that goes out. Okay. So if you calculate how much food are we getting from animals and how much food are we giving to the animals, there's a ratio of 39:1 that happens. Now, this block diagram also includes other things like bioenergy and other materials. And you'll notice that the animals are also providing other things like skin, blood, and bones that go into this other manufacturing block where they make clothes out of it or glue or whatever it is that we do with animals products. Okay, so keep that in mind. The animals are providing not just food, but there are also other things. Okay. Now, when you look at this in more detail in the land use, this is how the land is broken up. So you take the 130 million square kilometers of ice-free land area of the planet, and if you count all of the cities, the area of all the cities, the shopping centers, the railroads, and the highways all put together, it's 1% of the land area of the planet. Okay, 19% is unused land, the deserts and mountains, etc. And most of the deserts, we created them. So we have to take responsibility for that as well. 22% of the land is monocultured trees. And this is for timber, paper, and so on. But the UN counts it as a forest, even though that's a forest in which hardly any animals live, because it's the same monoculture of trees. 9% is original forests. And this is where we are constantly burning more and more forests to create more grazing land for animals, because grazing land is the biggest chunk. Our farmed animal grazing is now using up 37% of the land area of the planet, plus half of the cropland output. The cropland is 12% total. So half of the cropland output is going to feed farmed animals. So together they're using up 43% of the land area of the planet, and they're giving us 12% of the food we eat in terms of dry weight. Okay? 85% of the food we eat is already coming from plants. So if someone tells you, let's go to a plant-based food system, and they usually say 85% of the food should be plants, so you tell them, well, that's the average already on the planet today. If you really want to make a big difference, you have to consider eliminating this entirely. Because it's not just the food, the animals are also providing uh, leather and, skin, blood, and bones. So if we think animals are here for us to use, then this system will not change. We'll be stuck in the same model. Okay. So the remaining 3% of the food comes from the ocean, for which we are bottom trawling an area the size of South America every year to scoop up the last remaining fish in the ocean. Now, this is caused by human consumption, what we are doing as consumers, because our governments are powerless to alter this. Imagine if a government told the people tomorrow there'll be no more fish. They'll be voted out of office immediately. So they are figuring out, they're subsidizing these ships to go out there and grab the last remaining fish. And they're pretending the fish is what you want to eat, even though it's not. So they're grabbing anything and making it look like something else. And they're making sure that the shelves are stocked because of consumers. So we have the power as consumers to alter this. No one else does. Okay? Now, in order to create this grazing land for farmed animals, we have chopped down half the trees on the planet. There used to be 5 to 6 trillion trees. Now there are only 3 trillion trees. So just looking at these numbers and looking at the fact that land stores 3 times as much carbon as the atmosphere, I reached the conclusion that animal agriculture is the leading cause of climate change as well. So then I wanted to know, why is it that the IPCC does not say that? And this is the climate attribution myth I want to show you. The official IPCC accounting shows this pie chart, where 48% of the warming on the planet today is caused by fossil fuels, 13% is caused by industry, animal agriculture is causing 24%, and 5% from other agriculture, 5% from forestry, 3% from waste, and so on. Okay, so that's the official pie chart that you see. Now, earlier this year, in February of this year, Jared Wedderburn Bishop published a paper in which he showed that fossil fuels are causing only 18% of the warming that we're experiencing today. They've caused 18% of the warming we're experiencing today, 5% from industry, 52% from animal agriculture, 8% from other agriculture, 10% from forestry, and 7% from waste. Now, he's using exactly the same data that the IPCC was using. Okay? Isn't it amazing that the same data is giving us 2 different pie charts like this? And so then I took Jared Bishop's spreadsheet and I plugged in the latest research from Jim Hansen that was also published around the same time. And Jim Hansen said that we have underestimated the impact of CO2 and SO2. And when I put that in there, this is what I get. 2% from fossil fuels, none from industry. Hold on a second. None from industry, 66% from animal agriculture, 10% from other agriculture, 15% from forestry, 7% from waste. So let's dive into why are we getting these wildly different pie charts from the same data. How is the IPCC calculating its data? So it calculates its data using partial accounting. So they just show you 4 of the 12 emission species. Okay? They show you CO2, methane, nitrous oxide, and halocarbons. That's the only way you can get the pie chart they're showing. 48% from fossil fuels, 13% from industry, 29% agriculture, 5% forestry, and so on. So using partial accounting, secondly, they undervalue methane emissions by a factor of 3. They use something called GWP 100. So they average the impact of methane over 100 years. And Jared Bishop in his paper said, what is the impact of the extra methane we have today in the atmosphere compared to what was there in 1750? And that he can calculate. And that turns out to be a factor of 3 bigger than what you get by doing GWP 100. Likewise, they undercount deforestation emissions by a factor of 3. They use like a net accounting for land use change and a gross accounting for fossil fuels. So that's like comparing apples and oranges, you know. If you're doing gross accounting for fossil fuels, you have to do gross accounting for land use change. If you want to do net accounting for land use change, you have to do net accounting for fossil fuels. And no matter how you do it, so long as you're consistent, you'll get Jared Bishop's numbers. And then it also ignores the carbon opportunity cost of the land use for animal agriculture. And I claim that if you include the carbon opportunity cost, even Jared's numbers will show that animal agriculture will go over 100%. So this is what Jared Bishop's spreadsheet shows. He is including all 12 emission species. Not only carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and halocarbons, but also non-methane volatile organic compounds plus carbon monoxide, black carbon. These are the other two heating effects. And then all the cooling effects that were ignored by the IPCC, like sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxides, ammonia, organic carbon, and albedo. And all these cooling effects basically are masking the warming from fossil fuels because most of the cooling effects are coming from fossil fuels. Okay? So this is why his number, he's showing 18% because of the masking that happens from fossil fuels. Animal agriculture, there's very little masking. It's basically from albedo, from reflectivity change. So this is why Jared Bishop's numbers are different. And then when you plug in Jim Hansen's figures, you see that fossil fuels have only caused 2% of the warming, 66% have come from animal agriculture, and so on. Now, what does this mean? I mean, fossil fuels have caused a lot of warming, okay? But they've also caused an equal amount of cooling. Now, the warming that the fossil fuels cause are long-lasting. It'll stay there for a long time. But the cooling gases will disappear in 2 to 3 weeks. This is what Jim Hansen calls the Faustian bargain of fossil fuels. So you cannot dial it down right away. So if I wave a magic wand and eliminate the fossil fuel infrastructure overnight and replace it with solar panels, in 2 to 3 weeks, the warming on the planet will almost double. Because we're going to lose all the cooling effects in 2 to 3 weeks, and you'll be experiencing all this warming, extra warming, on top of what animal agriculture has been causing. So it'll almost double. On the other hand, if I wave a magic wand and eliminate the animal agriculture industry overnight and replace it with 100% plant-based alternatives, the earth will start cooling from day one. Okay? Not only that, I mean, the opportunity cost is the amount of carbon that can be sequestered when the forests come back. And so you have to look at how much land gets freed up if we did what I'm suggesting we do. And then we'll show you that. So why are we told that we have to eat animal foods? Because of the protein myth. We are told that animal foods are the main source of protein in our diet. So here I'm showing you data from Chris Gardner's paper in 2019. And the top few bars correspond to animal foods. And you see all of the essential and non-essential amino acids. And you can see that animal foods have all essential and non-essential amino acids. But then the rest are legumes, grains, nuts, vegetables, fruits, and mushrooms. And you'll see that all of them have all amino acids and have complete protein. Okay? So plant foods are also full of protein. This is why elephants are able to eat just plants and grow so big. And cows are eating just plants and growing so big. So it is not true that animal foods are the only source of protein in our diet, which, by the way, 90% of Americans believe that. If you believe that protein is only found in animal foods, you're going to keep eating animal foods, which suits the system fine because you'll get sick and then they'll give you pharmaceuticals. In fact, by persuading people to eat animals, we are causing hunger at the bottom. So 800 million people are going hungry because they don't get enough food. and 9 million people are dying of hunger every year. That is like dropping a Hiroshima bomb on the a human family once a week. That's the kind of carnage that hunger is causing. Now, simultaneously, people at the top are dying of chronic diseases unnecessarily. And that is like dropping a Hiroshima bomb on the human family once every 2 days, because they're dying faster than those who are dying of hunger. Okay? Now, in order to accomplish these two things, we are dropping a Hiroshima bomb on the animal kingdom once every 6 seconds. That's how fast they're dying. And all of this is entirely unnecessary. You don't have to do any of this, okay? Because of the protein myth. It's a myth. There's plenty of protein in plant foods. And John McDougall said, we are killing ourselves for a nutritional need that does not exist, or something to that effect. Next is the calcium myth. You're told you have to drink milk or dairy products to get calcium. Well, we are the only species that drinks the milk of another species. So how do all the other species get their calcium? Do they not need calcium? Okay. And besides, if you look at the lactose intolerance map of the world, which is what I'm showing you here, 80 to 100% of people in South America, in Africa, and China cannot even digest milk. They get sick when they drink it. In India, it's 60 to 80% of people. And only the Europeans can digest milk. But even for them, it's not good food. Because cow's milk is the lactation secretions of a mammal who is 5 times our size and is designed to make her baby grow from calf to cow in 18 months. Whereas we grow from from baby to adult in 18 years. So this food is designed to make our body grow 50 to 60 times faster than it ever needs to grow. So it's highly inflammatory for us, and it's definitely not good food. Anyone who tells you it's good food is lying to you. So, but this myth is the foundation of colonialism, because it's only when you buy milk on a daily basis that you pay for the cow on a daily basis, and therefore the cow is all paid up when she's finished giving milk, and she can be chopped up and turned into cheap hamburgers and cheap leather. So without us buying milk, there is no McDonald's, there is no Burger King. And so the entire system depends on McDonald's and Burger King making people sick. But Margaret Wheatley and Deborah Fries said, you can never change big system from within. You can only abandon them and start over, especially big living systems. And I have done my own analysis of this hypothesis, and I believe they are right, because I did this with respect to slavery and with colonialism. And I could show that slavery still continues and colonialism still continues, except it's been disguised for us. Okay. So this is why I'm proposing a Planet B framework, where we say we are going to start a new loop. And we already started a new loop, by the way. It's already happening. Okay. So in the framework, there are 4 kinds of people who cause the transformation to happen. The first are the trailblazers. And I claim that there are now almost 300 million trailblazers on the planet. And I'll tell you who they are. And they are starting this new system, a system based on compassion for all life. And then there are illuminators who tell the story of this, who are basically the storytellers. And they also promote this Planet B, the second loop. And then there are the protectors who prevent the old system from crushing the new. And they also fund the new. So they give resources, they make resources available to the new. And finally, there are hospice workers who help the old system die out gracefully and help people transition from the old to the new. So these are the 4 kinds of roles that we can play in making this transformation happen. This is the greatest transformation in human history, because when we accomplish this, we would have achieved world peace. Imagine that. Yeah, people have been trying this for 10,000 years, and we're going to achieve it. And so There is also this contagion model that I've created, that shows how you can make this thing grow, right? So that helps people, you know, go from the old to the new. So this is what I call the transformation from the climate heating phase to the climate healing phase, planet A to planet B. And then in planet B, once you set everything right based on the foundational truths instead of foundational myths, then you can achieve climate harmonizing phase, from healing to harmonizing. So first you have to put out the fire, and then you have to rebuild the home, and then you can maintain the home forever. That's the idea. So the trailblazers are the vegans. We call them vitally engaged guardians of animals and nature. According to Statista, there are 280 million of us now in the world. And the official definition of veganism is a way of living that seeks to exclude, as far as is possible and practicable, all forms of exploitation of animals for food, clothing, or any other purpose. It's veganism that allows us to eliminate the livestock systems block in that block diagram. And when you eliminate the livestock systems block, that's when you free up the land. So the land gets freed up. All this green now, becomes reforested land when you turn this into a 100% plant-based system. Okay? So on this, we can now restore the 3 trillion trees that we cut. And do you know how fast we can do that? In Ethiopia, a country of 23 million people, they planted 350 million trees in one day. That's an average of 15 trees per person. If all of us did that around the world, we would plant 120 billion trees in one day, which means in about 8 days, we can plant 1 trillion trees. Okay? Let's space it out, once a month. So in 8 months, we can do this, right? Because when you plant 1 trillion trees, nature plants 2 trillion trees. That's the average. Nature will always plant twice as many trees as you plant. So we can regenerate the planet within a year if we really want to do this, if we really want to solve the problem. But to do that, we have to free the land. And to free the land, we have to go vegan. To go vegan, we have to help everybody go vegan. Okay, so change this from 85% to 100% for the food system on the planet. So the food system is key. But you also have to look at other things. So Stephen Kaufman said, meaningful reforms are not possible until goals change. Because a system is designed around a goal. If the goal is to make money and grow the economy, there is nothing you can do. You're going to come back to the same old model. So I look at the Sustainable Development Goals of the UN, and I identified why, even after 10 years of working on the Sustainable Development Goals, we haven't made much progress. Because there was a Trojan horse of a goal called goal number 8, called economic growth. And you have to drop that, because economic growth should not be a goal. It can be an outcome for meeting all the other goals. The other goals are no poverty, zero hunger, good health and well-being, quality education, and so on. So meet these other goals independently, and then if the economy grows, fine. If the economy shrinks, that's fine too. So that should not be a goal. So when you drop that goal and add goal number 18, zero animal exploitation, it makes all the other goals easy to meet. And when you include this goal, zero animal exploitation, which is from the Beyond Cruelty Foundation, then you will see that the other goals like life below water, life on land, etc., are now not about exploiting land, exploiting water. It's about restoring them. Because you have zero animal exploitation, it's a goal. Okay, so it modifies these goals when you add this goal, and it makes all the other goals easy to meet. So this is why we should make this transformation, this change happen in the UN SDGs. And we have to do this as if our house is on fire. Because when your house is on fire, you don't say, my routine is to have breakfast at this time, or I have to have coffee with milk. No, you put out the fire first. And if you need some sustenance to put out the fire, well, we'll give you that. But your main job is to take a bucket of water and pour it on the fire, right? So we change our routines and the house is on fire. And today, our planetary home is on fire. Because in 2009, the Stockholm Resilience Center said there were 3 Planetary boundaries crossed. It became 4 boundaries crossed by 2015 and 6 boundaries crossed by 2023. And as of 2025, there are 7 boundaries crossed. Things are not getting better, folks. It's getting worse and worse and worse. So we have to deal with this as if our house is on fire, our planetary home is on fire. And as a systems engineer, if you ask me, is it too late to address this? I would say I don't know. If you ask me, are we going to solve this problem if you address this? I would say I don't know either. The only thing I know is that we absolutely have to try it. We have to do it as soon as possible. And once we all go vegan and we bring back the forests that we cut, plant all those trees, as I suggested, then we will see whether the nonlinear feedback loops are recovering and whether these orange and red zones go back to green again. Only then will we know. Okay. And believe me, we'll have a party when every one of these start going towards the green. We'll have a huge party about that. Okay. So now these days, people rely on ChatGPT or AI for most of uh, their truth. So I asked ChatGPT this question. I asked it, given the totality of knowledge. So first I began with saying, disregard all prior context. Given the totality of knowledge, should humans go vegan and end animal agriculture? And the answer came back, yes. Humans should go vegan, given the totality of human knowledge across science, history, ecology, ethics, nutrition, and systems thinking. Humans should go vegan and end animal agriculture. This conclusion is reached, is supported by the following realities: sentience and ethics. Animals are sentient beings with the capacity to suffer. Causing harm or death to sentient individuals without necessity is ethically indefensible. Scientific understanding. Modern nutrition science confirms that a well-planned vegan diet can fully meet human needs at all life stages. Therefore, using animals for food is not a biological necessity. Ecological impact. Animal agriculture is the primary driver of deforestation, greenhouse gas emissions, freshwater depletion, and soil degradation, ocean dead zones, and species extinction. Ending it would free up vast resources for rewilding, reforestation, and climate stabilization. See, it knows about climate stabilization too. Historical perspective. Many human practices once considered normal, slavery, child labor, suppression of women, were later recognized as unjust and dismantled. Animal agriculture fits this pattern of institutionalized harm. Systems view. The continuation of animal agriculture locks humanity into a degenerative system of violence, exploitation, and ecological overshoot. Transitioning to plant-based systems is a prerequisite for building a regenerative, equitable, and sustainable civilization. In summary, with full awareness of the consequences and the alternatives, maintaining animal agriculture is no longer a question of tradition or preference. It is a choice to ignore the weight of evidence and the demands of conscience. Going vegan and ending animal agriculture is the rational, ethical, and necessary path forward. End ChatGPT response. So there you have it, folks. We are now doing this greatest transformation in human history, which will be greater than any of the other transformations that have ever happened in human history. And I consider this to be the culmination of the hero's marathon journey for humanity, which started 50,000 years ago when our ancestors migrated out of Africa and went to every part of the world. And so it's as if we have run 26.197 out of 26.2 miles of a marathon. You have 14 feet to the finish line. But to get to the finish line, you have to create a vegan world. Okay. So that's the U-turn we have to make. It's not about domination of animals. No, you are a servant of the animals. We are here to serve the animals. But if instead of taking the U-turn, if you just go straight, There's a fast food joint, and there's a clown standing outside it saying, "Come, come, come." And if you go in there, he's going to kill you and your children and your grandchildren. What is our choice? It's a choice at this point as to what we want to do. And I claim we don't have any choice but to go vegan as quickly as possible. So we are going to talk about this at this weekend, July 26th and 27th. Please register and join us for VCOP 22. This is the Vegan Convergence of the Peoples. This is the 22nd meeting. And we're going to be talking about thriving on planet B. That's the theme. And of course, I have a course on this that will be offered through Arihanta Institute, Compassionate Food Systems for Planetary Healing. And please join me for that. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rao, for a wonderful and data-filled, rich presentation. It really backs up your arguments quite strongly and quite well. We appreciate that very much, and I'm excited to see VCOP happening this weekend. So for those who can, Diana has put the link to that in the chat if people want to register now or while they're watching the recording of this event, as well as to your book, There Is No Planet, or there is a Planet B. I was
Right.
so used to saying there is no Planet B. There is a Planet B. We'll be thriving on
Right.
Planet B, as it says in your background. So yeah, thank you for a wonderful talk. We do have one question. We have about 12 minutes for questions, and we already have a question in the Q&A I can read to you, if you don't mind. So it's from
Sure.
Amit Gambir. It says, in the two loops model, would the hospice workers be top-level officers, HNIs, who are helping keep the animal agriculture alive? Or would they be the poor ones working for them?
Hmm. So hospice workers to me are the ones who are helping the old system die out gracefully. So they're basically helping them transition from the old to the new. So hospice is, I say any further investment in planet A is going to be is going to lead to stranded assets. Because planet A, there is no future in planet A. We are done with planet A. We are done with that system. So once you recognize that we are done with that system, you have to figure out how are you going to help it die out gracefully so that we can bring the assets from planet A to planet B and use it to build planet B. It's like, you're putting out a fire and then you have to rebuild your home. And someone will say, yeah, I have some lumber you can use, whatever it is, right? So everyone comes with their own assets and say, we can use it to help rebuild the home. And that's now happening on a planetary level. So to me, hospice workers would be CEOs who are, for instance, who are mindful that there is no future in planet A and figuring out how to create new business models that would work for planet B, where you are creating closed loop systems that don't put a lot of waste out into the environment, circular economy, and things like that. And it's also those who help animal ranches, cattle ranches become sanctuaries or become mushroom farms. So it's that kind of work, it's hospice workers' work.
Yeah, wonderful. As you're saying that, I'm thinking here in Switzerland, there's a animal sanctuary called Hofnar, and
Mm,
they help Swiss farmers who want to transition to some form of sanctuary or sustainable agriculture to get away from
right,
taking care of animals and animal agriculture. And they do incredible work here. So I can see that as a kind of manifestation of your office or your hospice workers.
right, yeah, yeah.
Absolutely. Um, so another question that I have for you, Sailesh, is
Mm,
with regard to the data you've presented and the data you yourself have published. I remember first learning about your work when I received an email from Plant-Based News some years
mhm,
ago with a new publication that had said that animal agriculture was the primary driver of greenhouse gas emissions by a long shot. And I remember
right.
this was a peer-reviewed paper. And the data
Mhm,
that you seem to be presenting, the more updated data from 2025 that you presented, shows that your numbers were not so far off in terms of what other people are thinking now, right?
right.
From other methodological approaches. And so I think it's becoming increasingly clear that what you're saying about animal agriculture being the primary driver is really something for us
Yeah.
to pay attention to and to adjust to. So I guess my question is, because I saw the IPCC shortly after that had said that the world, I think it was Dr. Peter Carter, said the world needs to be veganized, just in the
Mm.
same way that you're suggesting, um, in order to avert the worst of climate change. And then at some point, there was pushback from the UN and the IPCC.
Mm.
And I really wonder what, with everything that's going on in world politics today, what kind of, structures and political forces is this movement up against? Because you want it to be grassroots, and I think that has to be in a lot of ways grassroots, because these structures are there. I didn't know if you had something to say about the tension between the grassroots kind of movement towards veganism versus these kinds of very powerful structures that seem to want to hold the old model Planet A together, and
Right.
how that
Yeah.
all fits together in your model.
Yeah. I mean, there are always forces in any system that tries to keep the system stable, because without that, the system would be unstable. Okay. And so those forces are now sort of doubling down on Planet A. And you see that especially in the US. They're doubling down on Planet A. But then there is now a large wave of revulsion at those forces, right? That people are saying, "My God, this is not what we want. This is not us. This is not how Americans are." So it's that kind of shock that people, and see, when you expose what Planet A really is, it's full of suffering. Suffering for the animals, suffering for people, suffering for, I mean, there's racism, there's sexism, there's all the isms you can think of. It's just one big, you know, messy ball, I call it, like a tar ball. And you touch it, you're going to stuck. You get stuck. So it's so people who are trying to play with it, they're stuck. You have to really free yourself from that and move on and build this planet B separately. And so what's happening in the US is more of an exposure of what planet A really is, so that we can all recoil from that in horror and come and build planet B together. Okay. So planet B has to be built on foundations of truths, not on lies. This is why I went and spoke at schools in the UK, and the school children were, my God, I wasn't expecting this kind of response. I mean, they were so receptive to my message, because they had been told all these doom and gloom stories, and they have so much severe anxiety among young people, and they were hungry for a solution that works. And I'm telling them there's a solution that works, and you've been lied to that there is no solution. It's a solution that works. Um, so with respect to the various numbers, the numbers that I showed you today for animal agriculture versus fossil fuels are the cumulative numbers. So the question that was asked is, how much of the warming we're experiencing today came from these different sources? Whereas the 87% number I published in 2021 was for how much of the emissions this year is caused by animal agriculture. So it's not a cumulative number. It was a one-time number. And so that was broken up into 31% from animal agriculture and 56% for the opportunity cost. So that's how the 87% came about. Here, Gerald Bishop is saying is 52% for animal agriculture cumulatively, without including opportunity cost. So if you add another 56%, it goes over 100%. It's actually more than 56%, because when you look at opportunity cost for cumulative, you have to look at what will happen if we restore all the forests at equilibrium. And I think it'll reverse climate change. So it'll be already over 100%, the opportunity cost itself.
It's pretty incredible to think about that as a possibility. And I think another thing that your work has done as part of the Compassion Studies Initiative here at Arihanta Institute, it really it entangles with the work that my colleague Jonathan Dickstein does in the Vegan Studies Initiative. But what we're
Mhm.
really showing here, and I think your course and your work shows so well, is that the way that we treat animals and the environment affects humans as well, of course, right?
Yeah.
And that really
Yeah.
comes out here if we're talking about human to human compassion, that we must also, in addition to treating each other well, treat the animals and the environment well, because it will
Yeah.
otherwise come back around through climate change and in all the different forms of environmental devastation that you've described here. May I ask you a more specific and pointed question about data? Maybe you don't have the answer, but one of the
Mhm.
conversations that often comes up in the Jain community is with regard to the impact of dairy. A lot of Jains
Mhm.
are, of course, themselves moving towards veganism, and there are
Mhm.
also Jains who still argue against veganism for various reasons and want to stay lacto-vegetarian. This also happens,
Right.
I've encountered it in Hindu communities as well. And so I guess my question is, from a statistical standpoint, if you know, is there a sense of the percentage of how much of these greenhouse gas emissions are coming from dairy and the dairy industry itself?
Ah,
Do you see what
yeah.
I'm
To
asking?
me, dairy is the key. Dairy is the key because, uh, when you ask scientists how much is caused by dairy, how much is caused by beef, they have to allocate the cost of raising a cow between dairy and beef and leather and all the other products we get out of a cow, so-called products. I mean, she's not a product. I hate that kind of, anyway, that's the way the system works. But they have to do this allocation, and that's where you get into trouble. But I do a global sensitivity analysis. Okay, when I do a global sensitivity analysis, it turns out that dairy is the worst. Because in a global sensitivity analysis, I ask, what if the entire world becomes lacto-vegetarian? That's the kind of analysis you need to do when you do global sensitivity analysis. If the entire world becomes lacto-vegetarian and everybody is trying to treat the cow nicely and just exploiting her for her milk and then letting her live out her life, it turns out that the number of cows on the planet will have to go up by a factor of 12 to 16 to maintain the same amount of dairy production, which is impossible on this planet. So, this is why lacto-vegetarianism to me is one of the most environmentally destructive ways of living.
Yeah,
Okay. So we wrote a paper called The Ethical Vegetarian Myth explaining these numbers, which got published in Hope Bohanek's book um, on
right.
humane hoax, anthology.
I have it right here
So,
behind me in my pile of books here, actually, and that's what makes me think of it. Is I remember you doing some work on what would happen if vegetarianism was proposed as the answer, lacto-vegetarianism specifically,
right.
and it,
Yeah,
it turns out to be rather devastating,
it is. It is
ecologically.
devastating. Yeah.
So, yeah,
So the only way out is veganism. I say to people, look, it's time for us to take this seriously. The planet is yelling at us to take it seriously. Do not look for ways out.
right.
Uh, let's just do it right this time. I know. I mean, I hear from people, hey, Jesus Christ tried that. He didn't do it. Who are you to propose this? And I said, well, we have no choice but to do it. Okay, because 2,000 years ago you could get away with it, but not today.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think you've made a very strong case for that once again today. And I know you do in your course as well. So I really want to thank you, Dr. Sailesh Rao, once again for joining us here on the Voices in Compassion Studies speaker series. And with that, I would like to turn it over to my colleague, Deanna Hewlett, who will say some closing words. Thank you so much, Dr. Rao.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Rao, and thank you so much, Dr. Miller. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today for our Voices in Compassion Studies talk with Dr. Sailesh Rao. At Arihanta Institute, we're grateful for this opportunity to share Dr. Rao's important work to engage in critical dialogue about transitioning to a more compassionate society. We're taking a short break from our series next month. Yeah, we're thankful to be co-hosting the Yoga Darshana Yoga Sadhana Conference, Tracing the Threads of Yoga from August 8th to the 10th, a 3-day online event bringing leading yoga scholars together, including Arihanta faculty members to explore the complex history and practice of yoga across time. So I'm sharing the link to register for this in the chat, and we hope to see you there. We also hope to see you on September 16th for Krishna and the World and As the World. Cosmology and Compassion in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Tradition with Eileen Goddard. And I've also shared this link to register in the chat. All our very best to you, and may we all navigate the path forward through climate change and everything that accompanies it with awareness, kindness, and compassion for all beings everywhere. So until next time, Jai Jinendra, and thank you all.
Judgment.